The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 941. Coming to you on Monday, the 24th of June, 2019. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic, Common Domestic Nuisances. But before getting into the topic, a few preliminary remarks, rather lengthy. Firstly, and as usual, I would like to send my deepest condolences to all families which have suffered recent bereavements, and the two families in particular, the family of Ms. Ruby Chambers and her Red Cross colleagues especially, and the family of Mr. Wilberforce Emmanuel. Mr. Emmanuel was a member of the CRC, the Constitutional Review Commissioners, and he became a very good friend of mine. I came to admire his solidity. He was a man of quiet man, but a man of solid and thoughtful views, and his contributions to the deliberations on the proposed constitution were very valuable indeed. My condolences go out to his family. Secondly, I want to make a strong plea to persons not to keep assaulting those young gentlemen who are in the habit of dressing like ladies, generally known as cross-dressers. For a man to dress like a lady is not a criminal offense. It is not against the law. Once people are not indecently exposed, people are free to dress how they want. Men can dress like women, women can dress like men. And the apparent lifestyles of the brothers who engage in cross-dressing should not give offense to anybody. It is a criminal offense for anybody to say they are going to beat up such persons or stone them or chase them or harass them in any way. We may not like the lifestyles they lead, but that is their business, that is their right under the Constitution. As long as they're not breaking any law, as long as they're not interfering with people, people should not interfere with them. And it is appalling for me every now and then to read stories that people have beaten some of these brothers or chased them from one locality or another. Nobody is inviting you to emulate the lifestyle they lead. That is their right. And as long as they're not interfering with you, why are you interfering with the people and assaulting them? It's against the law entirely. Total violation of their rights. And I strongly condemn the attitude that some people have of just chasing these brothers when they see them or assaulting them. And if the police get evidence of such assaults on the brothers, the police should prosecute the offenders. People are not to be molested. They're not breaking the law. I am not saying that I would encourage you to do what they are doing, but that is their affair. No concern of the rest of us. unless they interfere with us. And even if they sometimes come and beg us for money, that's not interfering with us. All you have to say is, no, I'm not giving you any money, or I don't have any money to give you. And that's that. So I'm appealing to persons to be more civilized in their behavior towards these brothers. Okay? Next, I want to do something which I've never done before on this program, namely to congratulate President Trump of the United States of America for something he did last week, Thursday night, when he called off the threatened strike against Iran. I made a remark in the last program I did before this one of the Law and You that Iran had been accused of having sent missiles into 2 oil tankers in the Gulf of Hormuz, causing them to be abandoned in flames. And I said on that program that some people are accusing Iran of those acts, but the evidence is not conclusive. Lo and behold, last week, Thursday, the news broke that President Trump had decided to launch a missile strike against Iran. And I really shuddered when I heard that news, because the Middle East is literally a tinderbox. And therefore, later on Thursday evening, when I heard another set of news that the strikes had been called off by President Trump, I was relieved, because something told me that if the United States launches missile strikes on Iran, nobody knows to what extent that could escalate and involve other nations, and before you know it, missiles are flying here and there. Now, we in St. Vincent and Grenadines must take note of these things, you know. Already our oil supplies from Venezuela have been disrupted by the events which took place in Venezuela, particularly since the beginning of this year. And if oil supplies coming from the Gulf area are also disrupted, we would suddenly find, or we could suddenly find, petroleum products priced beyond our reach. Assuming we could get oil in St. Vincent and Grenadines, and if there is a conflagration in the Middle East, missiles flying here and there, the time might come when we cannot get oil in St. Vincent and Grenadines, and if that happens, our economy will come to a standstill. At any one time, I am told, we only have enough petroleum products on the island to last us for 4 weeks. The petroleum ships have to keep coming to resupply us here. And what will happen if something erupts in the Middle East and we can't get oil in St. Vincent and Grenadines and can't get oil from Venezuela? You imagine what life would be like? No oil, there will be no electricity for one thing. Commerce will come to a standstill. And our lives would become unbearable. So that whatever the reasons why President Trump called off the strike, whether they were good or bad reasons, I was relieved when I heard that. And if perchance in the future you hear of the outbreak of hostilities in the Middle East, pray for us here in the Caribbean. Say all the prayers you can, because only prayers would be able to keep us afloat. So I thank President Trump. There are things for which I have condemned President Trump. His attitude towards Cuba, I find, is despicable. Recent American adventurism in Venezuela, I find despicable. The attempted coup in Venezuela, I find totally unacceptable. But for all the criticisms we could level against President Trump, we could find some things to thank him for. And I thank him for his forbearance in the light of what transpired in the Middle East. Excuse me. Having said that, let me go on with an aside, a commentary on current politics in the United States of America. The Democratic Party is something else. The members of that party say they want to remove President Trump next election, during November 2020. All right. That is what politics is all about. Supporting one side or not supporting that side. Now, if President Trump is as bad as people make out that he is, and he has done some terrible things, he also done a lot of good, let us be fair. If a party wants to remove President Trump from office, 23 of them would be vying for the slot for the Democratic nomination to go against President Trump in November 2020. 23 Democratic Party leaders in the states. Now, something is wrong with them. Because if they so want to get rid of President Trump, what they really have to do is decide on a handful, perhaps 4 or 5, and the other aspiring so-called presidential hopefuls should then get together and support a small group of people, and whoever emerges from the nomination process would then be put up by a united party against the current president. But when 23 of them tell me they are going to go out and campaign against one another to get the primary vote, I say they're wasting time, they're spinning top in mud. Because at the end of the day, when they have finished tearing down each other or tearing down one another, whoever emerges would be so wounded that President Trump would simply walk over the eventual wounded Democratic nominee. In the same way that Mr. Bernie Sanders wounded Hillary Clinton so much in 2016 that by the time Bernie Sanders was finished with Mrs. Clinton, she was just fodder for Mr. Trump. He had destroyed her utterly in the primary. And when people look and point to Comey and other causes why Mrs. Clinton lost, I say, look at what Bernie Sanders did to her. They had a bitter nomination process. She emerged the winner, but she emerged badly wounded. And Trump just executed the final stroke. So the Democratic Party in the United States of America, I fear, is heading for another catastrophe. Namely, they will pull down one another so much that Trump will then just walk over who emerges as the eventual candidate against him. All of them lusting for the power of the presidency. Excuse me. Now, let me, on a domestic note, on behalf of His Eminence, our Archbishop in the Spiritual Baptist Archdiocese, thank the over 200 ladies who attended a conference at St. Mary's Cathedral in Overland yesterday. We had our men's conference 2 weeks ago. The ladies had their women's conference. The youth conference is coming up on the 21st of July. And let me remind you that on the 7th of July, we would be having the admission of canons to the Archdiocese. And the general conference will be held on the 18th of August at St. Elizabeth Cathedral. But next Sunday is Sunday after the next. Enthronement, installation of canons would be again at St. Mary's in Overland. Congratulations to all the organizers of the Women's Conference and to His Eminence himself. One final preliminary, and I know I've been very long, as I warned you at the beginning. Those of you who occasionally go on to Eyewitness News, I would invite you to read an article published on Eyewitness News on the 22nd of this month, 2 days ago, by a Mr. Dominic Brisbane. I don't know Mr. Brisbane, but he appears to be a Vincentian scholar abroad. He has written some very thoughtful articles. I usually read what he has written. And he has written one about one of the likely byproducts of St. Vincent's election to the United Nations Security Council as one of the 5 non-permanent members. Look for the name Dominic Brisbane and read what he has to say. Very enlightening, very educational. All right, after those lengthy preliminaries, I come to the topic for the evening, which itself is not very, very long. Common domestic nuisances. In law, a nuisance is a state of affairs created by one person or group of persons which adversely affect the enjoyment of life of another person or another group of persons. For the purposes of this program, I have narrowed it down to domestic nuisances, and I have narrowed it further down to matters which affect one's neighbors, matters having to do with the quality of the enjoyment of life of one's neighbors. I say neighbors because nuisances normally do not affect people living far away from you. I'm speaking about the things you do on your property which degrade the quality of life of a neighboring property owner. Things having to do with sense, that is smelling, or things which otherwise affect the health and well-being of one's neighbors. I can think of smoke, polluted water running from one person's property into another person's property. Some time ago, I read in, I think, one of the newspapers about a person in Murray's Village complaining about the seepage of sewerage from a neighbor's cesspit or soakaway, affecting that person's property. The story went on to say the person had stopped their children playing in the yard because of the potential adverse effects on the health of those children by the seepage of sewerage from a neighbor's property. That is a nuisance. When you burn rubbish or even just bush on your land and the smoke goes into a neighbor's home and they have to close up the windows, and even that doesn't keep out all of the smoke, smoking up their clothes, burning their eyes, burning their throats, that is a domestic nuisance. When you have pigs rearing on your property not far from the boundary with another neighbor, and the smell of the pig waste is affecting the neighbor night and day, that is a domestic nuisance. When you are making noise continuously in your property and that noise affects the neighbors so that they can't rest in peace, they can't sleep, noise in their head all the time. For example, if you have a carpenter shop in your downstairs and you're operating power tools, power saws, power planes, and you do that late into the night, you adversely affect your neighbors. When you play your music at a loud enough volume that neighbors can't sleep properly, that is domestic nuisance. Now, for all of these, the law provides remedies. The law provides mechanisms by which you can seek redress to get some ease and comfort, mainly through the organs of state. But if the organs of state do not use those remedies provided by the law, then as far as you are concerned, there is no law. The Public Health Act has in all you need to get rid of nuisances from your neighbors. It has a mechanism by which complaint can be made to the Public Health Department. It gives the Public Health Department inspectors the right to come and inspect a property from which the nuisance is thought to have come. And it gives them the right to take action against the offending neighbors. But if the officials of the Department of Health don't do their job, then as far as you're concerned, there is no law. Of course, the alternative always exists that you can go to a lawyer and let the lawyer take appropriate legal action, but then that is money, that is an expense. Now, we all have to live and let live. So you don't mind occasionally if somebody burns bush and, you know, the smoke humbugs you for an hour or two. And the person doesn't do it habitually, but when the person does it all the time, what are you supposed to do? There is no defense against smoke. You can't lock up every single window and door in your house and live inside the house like a hermit. And in any event, once smoke gets inside your house, it affects your clothing, your curtains. And people are supposed to live in ease and comfort. When sewage water is seeping from somebody's premises, you expect the public health department, upon being notified, to come and do something about it. If that isn't done, then you have to take your own legal action or suffer the consequences, ill health. So that domestic nuisances can be dealt with by law in a manner that doesn't cost you anything or should not cost you anything, unless you have to take your own private legal action against neighbors. Nobody has the right to rear pigs in a town or in a village where the pig pen is next door to your bedroom. How are you going to keep out the smell of filth from the pigs? Unless the person next door uses the best sanitary methods of washing down the pig pen every day and so on. But that is done all the time. Sometimes the neighbor has a whole bunch of dogs barking day and night. You can't sleep. The law doesn't permit you to endure that all the time. The law has a mechanism: seek legal advice. Now, I know you don't want the neighbors to get vexed with you because they might retaliate and so on and so on and so on. But whenever you are affected by nuisance from unreasonable, uncaring, unlawful neighbors, you either have to put up with it or go and do something about it. Go to the authorities, the public health authorities, the police in case of noise. And if they don't do anything effective, then try and take your own legal action. Go to the Attorney General's office if you can't afford to sue and see if they can help you, as we sometimes did when I held the position of Attorney General. So while I am saying that as neighbors, you give and take, because the time may come when you create some noise temporarily in your premises, so you are expected to put up with a little bit of inconvenience from your neighbors, a little bit, but not continuously, and not in flagrant breach of your rights to live in peace and quiet and safety, particularly from diseases caused by the inhalation of noxious substances. Sometimes all it takes is some understanding from your neighbors, but in these days, understanding seems to be in short supply. People are more and more unreasonable. People more and more want to be wrong and strong. And sadly, the mechanisms of state appear not to be able to cope. It is unfortunate, but it is true. But in every case of nuisance, the law has a remedy. Something the law can do once you can afford to activate the processes of the law. I urge you all, I urge us all to be a little more considerate of the welfare of your neighbors. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that will be all from this program of The Law and You, program number 941. I look forward to being of further service to you next week, Monday, Divi, for another presentation in this public service nation building series, The Law and You. Do have a pleasant week, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.